Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Tales from the Fandom. We are here to talk all about Rick Riordan and what has been called the Riordanverse, or, people might know it more from the main character of many of the book series that he's done, which is Percy Jackson, but it's not just about Percy, and we are going to be here talking all about it. Today is the day that the fourth book in the Apollo series, Trials of Apollo, is coming out, The Tyrant's Tomb, and I am joined by a very special guest, Zaria, aka SailorMoonTurtle on Instagram.
Hi.
And she is a super mega Riordanverse person, and I am super happy to have her on the podcast to talk about all that encompasses this world.
This amazing series.
You know, we're here to talk about like everything. And,
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure you and I have read everything.
Yes.
Up to the point of not having Tyrant's Tomb available. As I said, we're recording this early, but Tyrant's Tomb has come out, and Amazon should be delivering it to my doorstep today.
And I am probably going to be heading to actually go see Rick Riordan to get the book signed and see his presentation.
Which is super awesome.
Yeah, I'm crying internally like, I'm going to be in the presence of this man.
Now, I want to know, because the series started out, Percy Jackson and the Olympians started out way back in 2005.
Yeah.
How did you get into it?
I actually had to read it for a sixth grade reading class, and honestly, I saw the cover and I was like, I hate this already. I can't stand this book. A lot of people were surprised when I told them that. I hadn't even read it, and I was just like, I know I'm not going to like this. So, of course, we started reading, and I got into it way more than I should have, and I enjoyed it. And we finished the first book. We watched the film that should not be named, and it just went on from there.
Oh, gosh. My kids also, in fourth grade, had to read the first one, Lightning Thief. And let me tell you, like, they read it, and they said, oh, we want to watch the movie. I said, absolutely not. You're not watching the movie.
What movie? What are you talking about?
And then I think they showed it to one of the kids' classes, and
I had to watch it.
They said they didn't even have my daughter, who is a super reader, was like, this was wrong, and this is wrong, and this is, and I said yes, I know. That's why Daddy told you not to.
It's not worth your eyeballs. Go listen to the musical.
So, Percy Jackson is a book series by Rick Riordan. The first 5 books are the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. Started in 2005, wrapped up in 2009. And I know that I did not get into the series until 2009, when one of my best friends said, hey, I've got this book series that's really good, and I'm going to send you the entire box set so you can read.
Nice.
And I devoured those books.
Nice. They're kind of like that, though. Like, you read the first one and you just kind of want to know a little bit more, so then you read the second one, and then you read the third one, then you read the fourth one, and then you read the fifth one. And then you think it's over.
Well, when I was growing up, I was always big into Greek and Roman mythology. Like, that is my jam. I love that time period. I love the mythology. I try to get my hands on whatever I can. And I think that one of the things that I love about the series and about the books that he's done as a whole is he makes it super accessible.
He does.
I appreciate that. So you got into it. School made you read it.
Yeah.
Thankfully you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, thank goodness.
And I do have to say, like, do you have a favorite book, or do you have a favorite character from that first original series?
From the first series. You know what? I'm gonna go with my man. That's so underrated, Charles Beckendorf.
Oh my gosh, you are pulling from like the bench.
Yeah,
Not even going for like
the
one
main
of one
trio.
of the big three or the trio or
Yeah,
anything.
probably him and Nico D'Angelo.
What is it about Charles that you love?
He made a sacrifice that a multitude of, at least in my opinion, a multitude of people kind of tend to forget about because he was introduced, I want to say, in the third book, second or third book. He was a very side/minor character, but what he did at the beginning of the fifth book honestly impacted the situations that were going on. I won't spoil too much for people that might not have read the series, but he made a really, really huge sacrifice that literally cost him, and I feel like that's a thing that a lot of people have forgotten about. And he's such a wonderful boyfriend. He's head of the Hephaestus cabin. He's done so many cool things that are kind of behind the scenes. So you'd really have to use some context clues to really get to know him. And of course, with his girlfriend Selena, you can find out more about him as well.
I think it's something where with the number of books that are out now between the main five, the Heroes of Olympus follow up, and then as we've gotten into like the Trials of Apollo, as well as a few of the other different series, the one thing that I always take away, because I try to reread them before the new books come out,
Same,
and it is always something where you are finding out more. Like every reread, you're like, oh wait, what? And
like you didn't notice that before.
exactly. And then when the new book comes out, it's tying into things from like some of the new books, especially with the Trials of Apollo series. You're reading it and it's tying back into stuff that happened in the first series, and you're like,
For
whoa,
real though, like he predicted this the whole time.
Like yeah, like it's like that funny thing about like where the guy has like the strings all over like connecting different things, and that's how I gotta assume sometimes this works, is that you're just
Most
connecting.
definitely, because even I know we haven't talked about Heroes of Olympus yet, but even stuff that's been happening in Heroes of Olympus was alluded to back in the first series. So when you reread it, it's like he was talking about this person. What?
Yep, it is so cool.
It is.
And I just, it's one of those book series that I can't recommend highly enough. And regardless of when it gets labeled like, the youth adult type label, it's like,
that's
yeah,
just
it's youth
joke.
Adult, but
so much more happens. Not. Yeah. Rick's like, yeah, this is for children. And then you read it and it's like, oh, this is totally for children. So, in the sense of a lot of stuff happens.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Charles Beckendorf.
My boy.
But you also have a love for Nico.
Yes, my little bean. My little sad bean.
And Nico's character definitely has had a presence within like the main the Heroes of Olympus and the Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I mean, he showed up in what, the third book, right? Titan's Curse?
Yes, that's when he and his older sister, Bianca D'Angelo, is introduced.
And ever since then, he's been a presence in our lives.
Whether directly or indirectly, or in the shadows.
In the shadows.
Yes.
Now, what is it about Nico that you enjoy so much?
I just love his character development, because when you first meet him, it's insane. Because I go back and read it, and I'm like, he acted like this. He was such a happy-go-lucky kid. He was into Greek mythology, so finding out he was a demigod, he was all excited and stuff at first, but then being a demigod smacked him in the face when you know what happens, and you just see this boy disintegrate, either physically or mentally, and you just see his journey. And oh my goodness, I could go on and on about Nico, because I feel like there's a lot of traits that people see, on the surface, but there's a lot of stuff that he's gone through below the surface, and it's reflected in stuff that he's doing behind the scenes and on the scene and near the scene, or whatever he's doing, because he's all over the place doing something.
Nico's one of those characters when the when the second Son of Neptune,
Yes,
Son
one
of
of my
Neptune
favorite
came out,
books.
which we'll talk about in just a moment.
Yes.
The Heroes of Olympus series, but
Mhm.
when Son of Neptune came out and you saw him show up and you were like, wait a minute here. What are
I
you
know
doing in
you.
this book series?
Exactly. He's just a sneaky little boy. But he's
It's
doing
so
some
good.
stuff.
Yeah, he's definitely doing some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, we got the big book or the original series with Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters, Titan's Curse, Battle of the Labyrinth, Last Olympian,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're done. You're like, okay, I'm
Yep.
out. Like Percy Jackson's, like we're wrapped up. Everything seems to be good except there is a little like oracle happening with stuff, and
Yeah.
there is kind of like cliffhangery, like okay, yeah,
Yep.
things are going to happen at some future point.
Mhm.
But we go from there to the Kane Chronicles,
Yes.
which I think and I'm going to speak personally about the Kane Chronicles.
That's okay.
I like the Kane Chronicles.
Yeah.
I think they were harder to get into because Egyptian mythology is something that I don't think a lot of people are introduced to, and it
Mhm.
makes it harder to make those connections.
That is completely true. I know when I first read the series, actually I had a foundation of Egyptian mythology thanks to art class. Thank you, previous art teacher. So it wasn't that hard for me to get into Kane Chronicles, but I can understand why, because there's so many complicated things about Egyptian mythology. There's a multitude of gods and goddesses. They have their own language, and just it's very confuzzling.
It is. And you have two, instead of like a trio team, you get a trio team in Kane Chronicles too, but
Yeah.
it mostly focuses on Carter and Sadie Kane. And I loved that they were so completely different.
I do too, because it's insane. When you find out that they're related, like what is their siblings? They don't what? Are you sure?
Are you sure? Can we get that checked again?
Yeah, can we look at their birth certificates and their parents? Are you positive?
So for Kane Chronicles, it's a trilogy, and
Yeah.
it's told differently. It's not written how Percy Jackson is. It's written from their perspective, totally first person, and it flip flops between them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they're demigods; they're magicians.
Yes.
So they can work some magic.
Some really cool stuff.
Oh, definitely. And they have like this whole thing that they've got to do. Again, we're trying not to like spoiler talk here.
Yeah.
But what was fun is as you're reading it, there is crossover, not explicit, but there's mentions of stuff happening because they're based in a different part of New York than what's happening in the Percy Jackson universe, which happens in Manhattan.
Yep, it's the Brooklyn house.
Yeah, they're in Brooklyn, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we saw this weird thing happening over in Manhattan." And it's like they're talking about that. Yeah. That's what they're talking about.
And there's also short stories. I want to say, "The Son of Sobek" is the main one. What's that, the third book? But I know there's a short story where they like actually,
Yeah, I think there's 3 of them.
Yeah, there's so
small,
it's
like,
so
chapter
cool
books and stuff. Where it's like, okay, like I think Percy and Carter meet.
Yeah, they do.
And they have like an issue with Sobek.
Yeah.
And then Sadie and Annabeth meet, but I can't remember what their story's about.
I can't either, honestly. But it's good though.
Yeah, the series is good. It's definitely I think it's definitely underrated. I think
it's most definitely underrated, at least in my opinion.
well, tell me your opinion. What's up?
Oh goodness gracious! I apologize in advance. I know Kane Chronicles. It can be a turnoff primarily because it's not the typical Percy Jackson kind of story. But I know it's also one of the first stories that Rick wrote that had a very diversified cast. Because, you know, you have Carter, who's basically African American, and his sister Sadie. She's mixed, but she's white enough to pass, quote unquote pass. And it's set in a location where there's just a multitude of cultures mixing in. And I know that's also another turn off for people, whether they know it or not, the diversified cast. And the story's amazing, and people, I guess since it doesn't necessarily have Percy Jackson in it as a main character, they're just automatically like not gonna like this book without giving it a real try.
I can totally understand that. That is one of the things where I know after reading the first 5 Percy Jackson books, I did go into the Kane Chronicles. And I think for me, the one thing was the difference in storytelling as far as the first person. And I don't have, like, it took a bit to get used to, but it still was good. I think for me, with my grounding in like the Greek and Roman mythology, it did take some effort, I will say, on having to look up and bless Rick Riordan for putting the information in about like everything that he's writing about. So you can kind of like quickly reference of, that's
here's
like
the god of this, and that's how you pronounce their name, like a mini glossary.
Yes, I am very happy that that's included, because it is the one thing that I had to like go back and forth on, was I don't know enough of these characters or these references to kind of get it.
So it's like you're reading, but you're also learning. Because I know this was kind of my gateway into more Egyptian mythology. I only knew like some gods and some goddesses, but this like really made me get into Egyptian mythology. And of course, credit to Yu-Gi-Oh, even though Yu-Gi-Oh only references it a little bit. But still, it's always good to learn something new.
So what was your favorite thing about the Kane Chronicles?
My favorite thing? Am I allowed to make it deep for a second?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. I'll probably say this again when we start talking about Heroes of Olympus. I'm sorry. It was just nice to see a POC character doing such amazing things, you know? Especially during the time period that I had read it, which was in middle school. You know, a lot of changes are going on. I'm witnessing a lot of things in the news and in the world. And just, it was cool to turn to something that was positive, if that makes sense. I'll go deeper when we talk about Heroes of Olympus.
Okay. So as Kane Chronicles is being released, Rick Riordan becomes like even cooler.
Yes, it's cool to read.
Because I don't know how he does it.
I don't either.
He like the same year that the second Kane Chronicles book, Throne of Fire, is released, is when the new Heroes of Olympus story starts up.
Ta-da!
Which is crazy, and he does that, bouncing back and forth for a number of years between Kane Chronicles, Heroes of Olympus, and then the follow up
Magnus Chase.
With Magnus Chase.
Yeah.
Now, you know, Kane Chronicles is in the same universe, but we don't get a lot of like crossover. Like there's not a lot of stuff happening between the two series, essentially. There are, and I like we said, there are 3 short stories of the characters kind of interacting, but not in these bigger books, I should say.
I want to say the third one of the short stories is where Carter and Sadie meet Percy and Annabeth, and they do some stuff. And I want to say that happens in between Mark of Athena, because it's around the time something Annabeth has loses its ability, but Carter can use it, and that's all I'm going to say. Because I don't want to spoil people.
Oh, it's in the paperback version of House of Hades. I don't have that. And
later, you don't?
Yeah, I have hardbacks.
That's okay. I bought it. I want to say I bought the hardback of House of Hades the day it came out.
It does look like they collected all 3 of them in something that's called Demigods and Magicians.
Yeah.
So, there you go. There's a book that I need to add to my Amazon wish list.
Do it. It's really good. It's good to get some fresh memories back.
All right. So we had we left Percy Jackson. We got into like some Egyptian mythology in the same universe. And then here we are. We're hit with The Lost Hero.
Ooh, boy.
and Lost Hero, it introduces us to new demigods.
What? New characters?
New characters.
Not Percy Jackson?
Not Percy Jackson. And
What?
they're Camp Half-Blood people, so they should be okay. and it follows new characters in a whole new storyline.
Yes, a very intense storyline. It's much different from the Percy Jackson series, or even Kane Chronicles for that matter.
Absolutely, because Percy ends on his 16th birthday in the original series because of a prophecy, and then there's a new prophecy which kicks in, and and so Lost Hero covers that from the side of the Greeks with Camp Half-Blood, and we have Jason Grace, Piper McLean, and Leo Valdez.
We love them. We love the trio.
So what when this came out, like, were you like, was it on your radar of, oh gosh, there's like a new Riordan series, or did you like really like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
All right, I'm gonna be honest, because I was such a young bean at the time. The Lost Hero was already out, and I want to say Son of Neptune was already out, but that was the last book that was out.
Okay.
I had to wait for Mark of Athena and House of Hades and so forth. So it was already, it wasn't on my radar, but then my librarian told me, oh, he made another series, right? I was like, what? So I immediately grabbed Lost Hero, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, I like that I like that the books essentially they did what is really good with a book, like the book series, is that you're expecting the readers to grow up with the characters,
which I did. Some people legit did, but I feel like I did too. It might not have been the same age, but
so it tackles some of the stuff that are for at that age, like 15, 16ish, like you're dealing with things now where you have like Jason Grace has no idea of who he is, literally. And then you have like Piper, who comes from like this really interesting background that gets better developed over the course of the series. Although I will say of the Heroes of Olympus characters, I feel like Piper is pushed into a role where I really wanted more from her at certain times, and I didn't get it. You're
not alone. I know a lot of people say Piper is underdeveloped. Like, you kind of get her story, and then that's it, and you just kind of have to watch her grow from then on. But a lot of people wanted that more expounded upon. There's some people that don't even like Piper, so some people can't stand the thought of her, so...
So in this series, we get another, 5 books?
Yep, it's another series that gets the 5-book treatment.
Gets the 5-book treatment, Heroes of Olympus. So we have, and it went from 2010 to 2014, Lost Hero, and then Son of Neptune.
Yeah,
which finally gets us to the Roman side of things after they had dropped hints here and there of like, there's like a split.
Yeah.
And then we get Mark of Athena, the House of Hades, and then the Blood of Olympus.
Yes.
And we get a number of characters who are around for this. You get your original, like Percy and Annabeth. Are there, and then you get Frank Jean. I don't know if it's Zhang or Zhang.
It's Zhang. Frank Zhang.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Hazel Levesque. Levesque. Oh,
I say
no.
Levesque. I don't know if anybody else says it.
I don't know. I don't have the pronunciation guide in front of me.
No, it's okay. That's just how I've always heard it. And, it's okay.
So we got Heroes of Olympus, which this time, the original series was the Titans.
Yes.
And this time we get a harder enemy. We get Gaia. Like
Gaia.
They're literally fighting the Earth.
Literally.
Essentially. It's
much.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
But the best thing is that you have all of these characters, with the exception of like two or three, that you get a wide spread of awesome like backgrounds and diversity. And
Amen.
And I think that was really cool, where you're having all of these characters dealing with like who they are and where they come from and how they grew up. And it's not just Percy's story anymore. Like, granted, Percy's like one of the big three, and
he's not alone though.
The main character, but he's not alone anymore.
Yeah.
So in this series, you get 7 after a time.
Yes.
With a few extras.
Some originals come back.
So you get some originals. So we have Jason, Grace, Piper, Leo, Percy, Frank, Hazel,
and Annabeth.
Annabeth.
Yeah.
Rounding out the group.
The 7.
The 7 heroes of Olympus. The prophecy of the 7.
Yes.
So, do you want to talk about any of them?
I'm so biased, but I want to talk about Hazel and Frank. Like, I can talk about all of them, but I can really go in depth with those two, at least.
Well, let's go in depth, because I love Frank. Frank is my guy ever since I got introduced to him in Son of Neptune.
Same.
But let's lead off with Hazel, because I know you love Hazel.
I love Hazel. She's my girl. Okay, and I guess I'm biased because I do cosplay Hazel Levesque, but Hazel, as I mentioned, same with Charles, she was just one of those gateway characters for me, because at that time period, which was around 7th or 8th grade, normally when you read about Black people, it only dealt with racism and slavery and such, the negative aspects. And yes, of course, Hazel went through that. In a sense, I won't give too many spoilers away. She overcomes that, and she's such a powerful and strong character. She's so determined. She's, oh my goodness, words cannot express how much I love this girl. And the stuff that she's gone through, and the stuff she's been through, stuff that she's going to be going through, considering Tyrant's Tomb is out now, and she's going to be a reoccurring character in that book. I just love her, and a lot of people really don't give her enough love, and it terribly makes me very sad.
I love Hazel's story. Again, we're trying to avoid spoilers.
Yeah.
In this discussion, which makes it a little bit harder, but
just in case anyone hasn't read the series, which I mean, it's been out for a long time, and most people probably have, but still, just out of courtesy.
Yeah, out of courtesy, we're trying to hold back here.
Yeah.
And Hazel is, interestingly enough, is the youngest of our 7 heroes.
She is. She's 13. I want to say she's 14 by the end of the series, at least. And she's done some amazing stuff that I feel like a lot of people overlook, and I know the reasons why it could get overlooked, but I'd rather not express them, because I don't, people have opinions, and that's completely okay.
I know that you, like, while we were getting everything set up for recording, like, you definitely had there were times on your Instagram account where you were like, this is straight up, this is what's going on about Hazel.
I'm known to avidly preach about POC representation, like in general, but primarily in the Riordanverse, because those characters are almost often overlooked by, I say the main four, which is Percy, Annabeth, Jason, and Piper. Everybody wants to focus Heroes of Olympus on those four, but they forget about Hazel, Leo, and Frank that have contributed tremendously, especially Leo, considering what he did in the last book. And it just breaks my heart that so many people just want to discredit them for everything they've done just because Percy's in the series, or Annabeth's in the series, or Piper and Jason are in the series.
Where like, as somebody who doesn't frequent a lot of like the internet, give or take, I mean, I frequent Twitter a lot because that's where I exist occasionally.
I suck at Twitter.
But where does that, like, where do you happen to like see some of this conversation? Because I know that I don't think I've seen any of it. And
you haven't?
No, and when
no.
I initially like have watched your Instagram stories or your comments about it, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen that expressed anywhere. But again, I'm not actively looking either.
That's okay. I've mainly seen it on Tumblr, which is why the Riordanverse on Tumblr, I don't bother with that because so many people have wrong judgments about characters, and it genuinely makes me upset. Like, someone had the audacity to say some stuff about Hazel, and I'm like, this is all wrong. And I gave factual evidence as to why. And I mainly see it on Instagram. Like, I've had conversations with people that believe and act this way, and I'm like, are you real? I don't mean to be rude. Like, you call yourself a Riordanverse fan and you want to include everybody, but when you want to purposefully exclude certain characters because they don't fit the Percy standards, so to speak. So I've mainly seen it on Instagram primarily, and also on Tumblr, but mainly Instagram.
Okay. It's definitely something where I know that you share a lot of other like Percy Jackson Riordanverse type cosplayers, so I'm always like checking out their stuff, and I'm like, okay, I don't think she'd share people that were not, not positive about these characters.
Like, I'm doing my best because I know there's some people I didn't know they thought that way, and when I did, it took several months. I'm just like, I need to distance myself because I don't want to be around people or support people that purposefully, treat them like that and exclude them as characters. Because I mean, it's the 7. It's not really the 4 or the 3 for that matter. Every character plays an important part or an important role.
Right. So we have Hazel.
Yes, my goal.
And I will say, for the sake of this, without Hazel, there wouldn't have been any Percy Jackson stories to begin with. So there.
Exactly. Without what Hazel did, there would not be the 7. There wouldn't even be Percy Jackson, technically, like you said, because what she did impacted everything. And of course, like you said, I preach this kind of stuff on Instagram, and I always get called out by people, but I'm like, I'm speaking the truth, and whether you want to hear it or not. And you wanting to call me out is showing your true colors as well. So I don't really mind speaking on behalf of Hazel or Frank or Leo, and I always do my best to get others' opinions and all that stuff. Like, I have Frank cosplayers, specifically one that's actually Chinese. So people that relate to the characters, if that makes sense.
And it's something where I know, and it's been discussed at length all over, whether it's comic books or TV shows or regular books, like having characters that reflect the diverse cultures and diverse like backgrounds of the people reading it, that affects people, that connects them. That is something
it genuinely does.
It's needed. Like, I know that I have friends that said, because of X character, I was able to, see myself in that in that character and see that, you know, I'm not just like a background character or a terrorist character or anything of that
nature. That is so amazing. The fact that Rick even opened that door to diversify his stories, and even he's gone even farther. I don't know if you've heard of Rick Riordan Presents. I keep saying his last name wrong because I'm weird, but he basically promotes stories that are written by POC people. So like there's this African author, I can't remember his name, but he published a book, and you know Rick promotes that, and it's amazing. It's so amazing. I haven't read any of the stories yet. I've only read the African American one that kind of reminds me of John Henry because it's about a hammer. But it's good that he's using his platform to promote other POC authors, because you know not a whole lot of authors do that. And, you know, he did his best writing POC perspectives and doing his research, but he's like, I know people that are this, and they're writing these stories, and you should read them.
Yep.
I think that's very selfless of him.
Yeah, I remember because he's it's under Disney. It's like Disney Hyperion,
yes.
And they said the one of the questions that he got all the time was, well, are you going to do XYZ mythology? Because obviously Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and then he tackled Norse, and his thing was, you know, at a certain point there's just things that he can't, like, it's not that he can't write about them, but it would be better for people to read it from from authors that have lived it or that are in that culture. And when Disney gave him his like that imprint that the Riordan Presents when like, because I remember when it's like, oh, like Aru Shah is Indian, I believe.
Yep.
And
it is. I've read some of that. It's really good.
And the only thing that I was questioning when we started getting all these was, are they connected to the Percy Jackson universe? Because there's a lot of stuff coming out, and I have not read any of it, and I don't think it is. I think it all exists.
It's not. It's like its own little thing. Yeah. But it's awesome that, you know, different readers from different backgrounds, they have something to go to.
Exactly. And they have the accessibility now of stuff that maybe would never have been popular or because he's using his privilege essentially to make sure that this material, these writers are, you know, they do have a spotlight, and hopefully through their works people can discover even, you know, others alongside them.
Exactly. It's just a cycle of learning more, getting more, obtaining more, knowing more.
So we talked about Hazel, but I got to talk about Frank, because
my boy Frank
of all,
or our boy,
you know, of all the demigods that we happen upon, Frank is one that I identify the most with, because he's not identified as a demigod until late, like way later in his life than normal. Like they kind of like kept him a secret from everything, and he's not like the way that he's described. Like he's not like the athletic type build of it. He's like they like, isn't he like he's like pudgier.
Yeah. He's pudgy. He's described as cuddly, but he's also like bulky. So he's been described as like awkward. And I know a lot of kids can relate to that, you know.
Exactly. And that's
like, you don't have to have the perfect build to be a demigod. Anybody can be a demigod.
Exactly. And I love his background. And again, try not to get into spoilers about his background, because I think it's one of the coolest things to kind of discover as you're reading about him.
It is. And it just emphasizes even more how important Frank is.
Yes, I love Frank. Frank is one of the characters where there's something that's discussed, and you and I talked about it on Instagram, I think, but there's one of the things that was discussed in his initial like thing, is it's kind of like played off. Like they don't really make a big deal about it, but as you're reading about it, you're like, oh, wait a second, let me go back and read that again. And and you, and as Tyrant's Tomb comes out today, and we have confirmation, you know, that they're
They're coming
going
back
to New Rome, and Frank and
Yep.
Hazel are going to be a part of it. And I'm like, oh gosh, Frank, please don't.
I'm
Frank.
crying. Just from the excerpts that Rick has been releasing to tease the promotion of his new book, just the thought of seeing a character that characters rather, that people belittle, and the fact that they're going to basically, in a sense, have their own book, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's with Apollo, but they're going to have more story, and I'm so excited. But it also makes me sad because when we just start discussing Trials of Apollo, that's just another series that a lot of people don't read, and it breaks my heart.
So
a lot.
So we have like the Heroes of Olympus series. So we got another 5 books.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
as I said, at the same time, transitioning off of Kane Chronicles, he started another series,
Magnus
Chase, which shock upon shock, if you read the Percy Jackson books and you realize that there's an Annabeth Chase, and that was the big question, was are they related? I'll go ahead and just say, yeah, they're related. They're cousins.
They are. It's mentioned at the end of Blood of Olympus, I want to say. Like she's going to check up on her cousin in Boston.
Mm-hmm. And
so that tied it in.
It tied it in, and we get Magnus, who is into the Norse mythology.
I'll be honest. Can I be honest?
You can be honest.
Okay, because like Blood of Olympus came out my sophomore year, and of course around that time that was when Magnus Chase was coming out. Magnus Chase originally was such a huge turnoff for me, because I was like, what? Norse mythology? You mean like with Thor and Loki? Nah. So I can understand people that originally didn't want to read it, but then I read it and I was like, shame on me.
Well, I'll go ahead and give my thing, is that number one, I kind of dislike the end of Blood of Olympus.
You are not alone.
So I felt let down by the last thing that happened in Blood of Olympus, so I was a bit disappointed. But then Magnus Chase came out, and I have to say, I did not like the first book. I loved the second book and the third book, but
the third one,
the first book, I struggled through it. It was hard to get through.
I did too. It wasn't really until the second one started getting its momentum I was like, oh, okay, I can read this. And then the third one.
But the cool thing about Magnus Chase, as Riordan started in Heroes of Olympus, is that again we get a diverse cast of characters.
We do.
We have a I believe Muslim Valkyrie. Yep.
Sam.
And then we have a mute character.
Yes.
So only speaks it through sign language. And then we have a character that shows up, I believe, at the end of the first book or in the second book.
I want to say the second, if you're talking about Alex.
Yes.
Alex Fierro.
And Alex is gender fluid, I believe, if that's the correct term.
She is. Yes.
So
she's a lot of other wonderful things, but I believe that's one thing we can identify with her as a character.
So you get,
and that was such a huge thing, considering when I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, go
ahead. The time period that these Magnus Chase books come out, I feel like Rick just plans when these series are coming out, because it was kind of revolutionary. Because during that time period, I know a lot of things concerning sexuality and all that was coming out, and a lot of things were being debatable. So again, another thing that people can relate to, another character people can relate to, which I love Rick. I love this man. He's goodness.
So we have Magnus Chase, and it's another trilogy akin to
it only got
the Kane Chronicles. So
only got the 3-book treatment.
Got the 3-book treatment. And it follows the Norse gods. So if you're not familiar with them, you will, and you'll get acquainted. But
very acquainted.
The thing that gets me is that your main character, Magnus Chase, is dead.
Yep.
No, and I don't feel like that's like a terrible big spoiler because it happens in
Oh
like
no,
the
it's
second
not a
chapter.
spoiler.
So,
Yeah, it's like the first or second chapter.
but yeah, Magnus dies and he goes to dang, now I'm going to forget where he went to.
Hotel Valhalla.
Yeah, there you go, Valhalla. He gets to go to
Yep.
Valhalla and prepare for the end of the world essentially.
Pretty much. Well, doing some other stuff that won't be mentioned because of spoilers.
Because it is spoilery, but you get a lot of characters that are really cool, and different.
They're utterly hilarious.
And yeah, it's another series where I think I'm glad that he stuck with how he instead of doing first person, I'm glad he stuck with the way that he's been writing like the Percy Jackson books. For the like the different characters' point of views or perspectives.
Yeah.
Again, I know I had trouble getting into the first one. Your mileage may vary on that book series because I just think it's really dependent on where I guess your background is on mythology, but also
true.
You're not. I told somebody this when I read the first book is that we as we're reading Percy Jackson, we're growing up with him. But Magnus is already
like 16,
17-ish when you first like join him and you're like, okay, he's already a developed person. Yeah. I would say. And you're just having to kind of like
adapt
join
to that.
him.
Yeah. Join him. That's such a whole mood for that series. You just join. You don't know what's going to happen, so you just join.
You just join and see what happens and see where they go.
Yep.
So, yeah, but Magnus Chase, again, a lot of good stuff that comes out of it. And it kind of ties into, like, the ending of Magnus Chase is very...
Oh, gracious.
I want to say it's cliffhanger-y.
Oh, it is.
Not on the main story, but on stuff that is going to come later, I think, but I don't think it's going to come in the Trials of Apollo series. At least that's my perspective.
Oh no, it does actually. What happens at the end of Magnus Chase? Because Trials of Apollo and Magnus Chase are happening at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
see, I didn't know specifically.
Oh, you didn't? Oh,
no.
Well, there you go, friend.
I figured Trials of Apollo was going to end, and then we were going to have like this really big, like mega crossover series.
I'm praying that's what'll happen.
with the Kanes and with the Seven and with Magnus and his group.
That would be fantastic. I feel like I kind of agree with you that it's probably going to somehow lead to that, like some kind of Avengers Endgame crossover.
So we have Magnus, and you just said that Magnus and Trials of Apollo are happening at the same time.
Yes, pretty much.
Apparently, either I glossed over or don't remember at this point because it's been that long.
Like the books, I guess they came out at different times, but what happens at the end of book 3, that event was what happened at the end of book 3 for Trials of Apollo, the Burning Maze.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's why that's why Annabeth was crying. That's my inspiration, but I've been told that they're both happening pretty much at the same time. Both events are.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. I'll have to go back and take a look at them then. And so then, here we are with Riordan. He's got Magnus Chase coming out, and then boom! Trials of Apollo.
Trials of Apollo.
And I originally thought that it was just going to be a 3-book series, but it is not.
It's getting the 5-book treatment, to my knowledge.
Getting the 5-book.
Yeah.
And Tyrant's Tomb is book 4. And Trials of Apollo, not spoilery, is Apollo gets turned into a
human.
A person.
Yeah.
A human. Lester Papadopoulos.
He hates that name so much.
And I love that name so much.
I do too, but he's a god, so he hates it. It's like, ugh, cringy.
And again, like so by this time, are you on it? Are you like, hey, there's a new book coming out?
Oh, hey, there's a new book coming out. Because I was, especially after the Burning Maze, I wanted to be done with Rick so bad because, not to be spoilery, but basically after I read that book, I kind of mourned for several months with the rest of the fandom. So hearing that, there's going to be a next book, I was kind of excited, but I was like, but what you did in the third book, though? And then, of course, hearing that my favorite characters are going to be coming back, that made me more excited because I'm like, we're going to see more. We're going to get more. I'm so excited, but I'm also scared because so many people have been theorizing about this book. And I guess today we're going to find out if it's going to come to pass or not. So that's what scares me the most.
It is definitely something. I was really surprised because, I'm going to tie it back to Charles.
Yes.
With what happens in book 3 of Trials of Apollo. It's definitely something where I'm not sure if he shied away from certain things in his books. But definitely, like, I was caught off guard on Burning Maze and what happened in it.
Same. I kind of got spoiled a little bit thanks to Tumblr because certain countries and got it like days before, so there were rumors about what had happened, and I was like, nah, Rick wouldn't do that. But then you got to remember, but what happens? He's technically a side character in the series, so that's all I'm gonna leave it at.
Yep. And I know that I had to tell a few of my friends because they hadn't caught up in Trials of Apollo. And they said, "Oh, just spoil me." I was like, I don't really want to.
I don't think you want to know this one.
if you really tell me, I'll go ahead and tell you. I think one of my favorite things, though, in the Trials of Apollo series are the chapter titles.
Yes, they're very reminiscent of Percy Jackson. No, they're not. They're not, because they're haikus. So yes, they are kind of reminiscent of Percy Jackson because you're introduced to Apollo in that series, and this is kind of what he does. Since he's the god of poetry and stuff. You just get more of it, and it's like, great. I thought this was over in that series, and now I get a dose of it every chapter.
Oh my goodness, there's so much stuff, and I don't know where to go with this, except I really hope that people check out these different book series by Rick Riordan.
I pray they do too,
because they're so easily accessible.
They really are. Like I can look up like recently yesterday, because I'm doing an illustration project for Sun and Neptune. You can just look up Sun and Neptune PDF and several links come up, and you have the whole book on your computer screen like that.
But I know that I feel like there's a character for everyone. Especially once you get into Heroes of Olympus. But definitely start with the Percy Jackson series, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians, because a lot of what happens stems from that. And as we have talked about, you're going to go back and forth. You're going to be like, oh, that was, wait a second, and be checking back in books to see the connections, because there's a lot of
There is a lot. It kind of reminds me of Five Nights at Freddy's, in the sense of this big old storyline and stuff that might have happened here. It was alluded to in there, and then you got to go to here to figure out what happened there. It's just so many different ribbons of stuff, and then you find out it's all connected, and it's like, what? This man had this whole story planned from the get-go.
It is wild. I'm really excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see if, while the After Tyrant's Tomb is released, we should get the next book in say like a year.
Yeah, most likely a year.
But will we get another series at the start?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Dun, dun.
This book has me terrified, because I really don't want anything that's been theorized to come to pass, because I'm gonna mourn and I'm gonna want to cancel Rick, because it concerns my favorite characters. I'm like, if he does anything, it's over. I'm gonna go cry. I'm gonna burn my Camp Jupiter t-shirt.
Hey, don't do that.
Oh no, that was money. I wouldn't do that. I'd just cry for a good while.
Oh gosh.
The book before really tore me up. So if it was with somebody that like I genuinely cared about, it's over. But I guess we'll find out today.
I guess we'll find out today, and then we'll be Instagramming back and forth.
Yep. I'll update you as the book goes.
That's right. So for people that have listened to this episode and they want to check out your work, because you do cosplay a few of the characters.
I do. Can I talk about them?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay, cool. I wanted to ask this in case.
Yeah, absolutely.
I primarily cosplay Hazel of Esk. If I don't say this, I'm gonna get petrified by so many people. I'm basically canon. A lot of people call me canon Hazel of Esk. I don't consider myself canon, but considering like 50, 100 plus people tell me I am, and that if I don't say otherwise, it's over. I low-key advertise it, but I always see it. I'm not even kidding. Like on TikTok, we're gonna go watch TikTok. Because, I had a live stream on there and people were like, you're such a canon Hazel. And I'm like, I'm not a canon Hazel. And they're like, okay, if we can get a chain of 10 or more people saying you're canon Hazel, you have to say you're canon. I'm like, okay, you can't do that. I got proven wrong in like 15 different chains in the span of 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah. But I always see other people as canon. I try not to say I'm canon because I don't want to hurt people's feelings. But I mainly cosplay Hazel. That's pretty much what I'm known for, but I also cosplay Charles Beckendorf, Carter Kane. I recently did Carter Kane a bit ago, and that got people crazing out because, not a whole lot of... Actually, people don't cosplay from Kane Chronicles. It's terribly sad because I was looking up references for Carter Kane, and nobody really cosplays him, and I was very disappointed. But I guess you could say I basically cosplay... underrated POC characters. And of course, I've cosplayed Annabeth before as well. That was just because people wanted me to, and I was like, okay, why not? And Clarice LaRue from the Percy Jackson series. Guess eventually I'm going to be like a Pokemon or Ash Ketchum. I got to catch them all, so I'm going to cosplay them all. That's what's going to happen. I already got a chain of like 6 people I've cosplayed from the Riordanverse. It's great. Yeah, Alex Fierro is probably going to be next. Let's be honest here. Or Percy. I might tackle Percy and make some people mad. Oh. We'll see, though.
Oh, gosh. That's so crazy.
I try to be. And just being me.
So for people to find you and what you do on the internet, where can people go?
I have an Instagram, SailorMoonTurtle. I post Sailor Moon. I post I post a lot of Heroes of Olympus stuff. I post my TikToks on there. I might rant on my story on occasion, like I have recently about POC representation. But my DMs are always open. I also have a cosplay group at Different Breed of Geek. We're also on Instagram and we're on Tumblr. I also have a Tumblr. I'm not as active on there as much anymore, but feel free to chat me up. We can talk about potatoes for all I care. If it makes you, if it makes you smile. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Talking about potatoes. Talking about Percy Jackson.
I've had conversations like that before, both good and bad. So anything, especially with Tyrant's Tomb coming out.
If you're listening to this, let's be positive and talk about what you love about the series.
Positivity. That's pretty much what I'm known for. I don't know why. I just like complimenting people. Like, you're amazing.
Well, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking about the Riordanverse. And for people that enjoyed this episode, next week we will have a full interview talking about different fandoms beyond the Riordanverse.
I want to thank you for having me.
Well, it was absolutely...
Because I was honestly very nervous that you asked me, because I'm like, wait, only like, in my opinion, like big name cosplayers get asked to do podcasts and stuff. So I was like, you want to You want to interview me? Are you sure? I'm just a big old nerd. My quote is, I'm a potato that can turn into French fries.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.